time for the best coverage of the top stories in sports. The Sports Wrap with Jason Page starts now.
Indeed, and great to have you with us on this Wednesday edition of the show. Sam Yarnell will hang out with us a little later on. Travis Hunter as the Shohei Ohtani of the NFL. Can he do for the NFL what Ohtani has done for baseball as a two-way player? We'll talk about that some coming up a little later on. Is it a fair comparison? We can talk about that as well. So we'll get into that. Also, want to talk about Bryson DeChambeau's comments regarding Rory McIlroy. We haven't talked about this in the first couple of days of the week. Ryan Ballingy mentioned it briefly in our conversation on Monday, but we didn't really delve into it that much. Now Bob Rotella, the noted sports psychologist, has weighed in as well to sort of add some legs to that story. We'll get into that coming up a little later on. Some talk about MLB home run leaders and odds and ends and some other notes from around baseball. But we start things out in the NBA. Let's spend the first half of the show. Why not? Spend the first half of the show on the NBA. And to do that, we bring in our friend Kurt Helin of Pro Basketball Talk at NBCSports.com, is always gracious enough to give us his time. So Trae Young nutmegs a guy and then gets thrown out of a game in a Hawks loss to the Magic last night. Just your typical Trae Young. I thought Orlando would win, but that was an impressive effort. Before we get to the Warriors and Grizzlies, and God knows there's plenty to talk about there, I don't want to give short shrift to the Magic.
They're a really good defensive team that has found its offense over the last month, a few weeks. Once they got healthy, they can create a lot with Paolo Banchero and Franz Wagner, and we can talk about, look, they're about to find out how far they are still from being Boston or Cleveland, but that's a team on the rise because they defend so well. They're going to be in every game. It's not going to be an easy one for Boston. They're going to get pushed around a little. And I like the way Jamal Mosley has that team playing going forward. Like, we can talk about what they might need to ultimately reach the highest levels, but he has built a culture. He has built a system. They know who they are. They know what they want to do. And Paolo Banchero's, he'd have made All-NBA this year if he'd stayed healthy.
There are a lot of, there's a lot of these culture guys around. Ime Udoka, sort of set the culture. We were talking about Joe Mazzulla yesterday on the show, and I said, well, Mazzulla just kind of built on the culture that Ime Udoka had already built, within that Celtics organization. I think that's fair to say. Jason Kidd, even in Dallas, the culture that he has built there, that team could have easily rolled over and died when they had like 8 guys on the roster that were healthy and couldn't even put a healthy team on the basketball court. There are just some of those guys around the league. And I know we sometimes we hear that word culture and it feels like it's overused, but in the case of a team like Orlando, Mosley really has changed the feel around that whole organization.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right. It's if it were easy, Mike Budenholzer would have done it. Yeah. It's not always easy to build a culture in any sports organization. It takes the right players. It takes a lot of things to come together. But he knows who he wants his team to be, and they are playing like him. And Jamal Mosley was like one of the hardest leaves off Coach of the Year ballot. Like, I didn't get him on there, partially because, look, they're in this position and not higher up the board because they were without Paolo and Franz Wagner for large chunks of the season, and they're still in the play-in. They were still the 7th seed at that, and now they're going to be, advancing. That's speaking to something.
What does it say that Cole Anthony comes off the bench for that team?
Cole Anthony's.
I feel like he's better than a guy that's coming off the bench.
But he's thrived in that role more than he's thrived in some guys, whether the pressure's off or they like the energy against the second unit. Some guys really just thrive with that. And it really does help them go against second units because Cole's a good point guard. And it's funny because if you talk about what they need, you're like, they could really use a point guard and a floor general to organize things. But the connection with Paolo and Franz wasn't quite there, right? And they need a different guy. But he's been phenomenal off the bench. And they've got good bench guys beyond that. And Isaacs and on
Yeah.
down the line. Like they've got guys who play roles and know what they want to do.
Yeah, 20 off the bench last night. Let's talk about the Warriors and Grizzlies. What the hell was going on with the officiating late in that game, Kurt? My God, what are they watching? What games are these people watching?
And it's all of it not reviewable, even down to the even down to the 5-second call at the end, which may have been 5 seconds, but I was like, wow, that seemed fast. And maybe it was, maybe it wasn't, but it's unreviewable. Steve Kerr used his challenge, so the Podziemski block, for example, which looked pretty clean on review, and the Looney foul he couldn't check. They really did seem to get, I want to say caught up in the moment, because they weren't benefiting the home team, but they seemed to just miss some stuff down the stretch that was hard to watch. And I don't know. It's frustrating because you let us say, well, that's what happens. Refs are human, but also this is why we have review, isn't it?
But get it right.
The NBA's challenge system often leaves guys at the end of games without a challenge.
And it's the playoffs. And we're in play-in and playoffs. Yeah. You got to get this stuff right. That notwithstanding, playoff Jimmy showed up. I know he had a late turnover in that game that was kind of a head-scratcher, where he basically threw the ball away, and that led to the Podziemski foul. But man, him and Curry combined, when they play like that, they're going to be tough to beat.
Oh, I've got them going through to the Western Conference Finals. I have them. I have them beating Houston, then beating the Lakers, like to make this little run and they might not be able to do that. Frankly, they may not be able to beat Houston. Houston may be better than I think they are, or more playoff ready than I think they are, is maybe the better way to phrase that. But this is what I trust about them, is that Jimmy Butler and their defense really is good and raises it to another level. Curry can still do Curry things, and they've got enough guys in pods, in Buddy Hield some nights, whatever. They've got all these role players who can shoot, who can make plays, and they need them to. It's weird that this is a team as constructed currently. It isn't as deep shooting as you would think. Like you think of the Warriors, everybody can shoot. They really can't. They're not a deep shooting team. They have enough, and they have guys who just find a way to get these things done, and they defend well. Look, I think they are poised for a run.
By the way, did you vote for Draymond for Defensive Player of the Year?
I did not. He was on my ballot.
Wow. Who'd you go with?
Went with Evan Mobley, who was, and the difference honestly was, Mobley was consistent.
Fair enough.
All year long.
All right, fair enough. Green fouled out of the game last night, had 4 points, but did make a couple of big plays down the stretch. All right, we're coming back. We're keeping Kurt. We've bolted him to the chair because I want to ask him something about Steve Kerr and the Warriors. Coming back. Welcome back. Still talking NBA. Kurt Helin hanging out with us for the first half of the show because there is a ton of NBA stuff yet. So we didn't even get into the Budenholzer news, which we'll probably get into here in this segment. Kurt Helin of Pro Basketball Talk and NBCSports.com is hanging out with us on the program. Let me go the other way on the Warriors for a second. They're all celebrating and going crazy last night for being a play-in team in a game they could have just as easily have lost, where they blow a huge lead. Now they go in to take on a Rockets team that is the 2 seed. If they get bounced, we're seeing all these different coaching moves. I argued 2 years ago it was time to break up the Warriors. Now they go and sign Jimmy Butler, so that's obviously not happening. If they get bounced in the first round of the playoffs, is Steve Kerr at risk?
No.
Could there be a conversation where him and ownership come together, and it's not necessarily a firing, but it's more like a Joe Torre, hey, you did some amazing things for this organization, but it's time to move on. Because they got to change something. I mean, you don't go and get Jimmy Butler to get bounced in the first round of the playoffs, even if it is against the 2 seed.
First off, I would almost picture more of a move. Not that he's going to take Dunleavy's spot, but it would be a move into the front office or a consulting role or something. Like he would move up, and to be out there, he is that established in the organization. And look, there are plenty of Warriors fans who've been frustrated with him for a couple of years and his rotations and his choices. I don't know. It would be tough to do in this sense. that's Curry's guy. At the end of the day, it's Curry's guy, it's Draymond's guy, and so that's the move made in consultation with the stars. But it is also not the craziest thing. By the way, it is not the craziest thing that they get bounced in the first round. That Houston
Right.
beats them. It is. Houston is the 2 seed for a reason. They're young legs and defense, and that kind of athleticism is going to bother. It bothered the Lakers when a few weeks ago. It would bother the older legs of the Warriors. It's possible, but I think ultimately they're going to ride with Kerr now through the end of the Curry era. But unlike Popovich, who kept saying he would walk away when Duncan walked away, then didn't. I think when Curry walks away, Kerr will walk. He will. He's been in the front office. He's done TV. I think he will be happy to get off the coaching circuit.
Fair enough. Move to tonight's games. Miami and Chicago, Dallas and Sacramento. How do you see those matchups playing out?
Dallas and Sacramento is interesting because you would think Dallas with Davis, with some of the guys they've got, could make a run. But Sacramento, as much as we kind of are not wowed by them because they're in Sacramento, and B, they're not a threat really ultimately for anything beyond this round. But Zach LaVine can go get you buckets. DeMar DeRozan can go get you buckets. I just think they're going to win this game. They've got too many guys who I trust can go score. They're at home. The crowd will be fired up. So I like their chances. And by the way, out east, I like Chicago's chances not only tonight. I think they could beat Atlanta. I think Chicago getting through as the 8th seed behind Giddey and Kobe White. That's a team that played really well the second half of the season after they traded everybody. Their defense got better. Buzelis, the rookie, stepped up. That's an unimpressive group of 3. And if you tell, I think Chicago, I picked this at NBC Sports. I actually have Chicago coming out as the 8th seed. I think it's very reasonable.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you on that. And it feels like that team has just always found a way, throughout this whole season, despite what their record might be. It just feels like they're going to find a way. Mike Budenholzer, not surprised that he got let go. He is not the ultimate blame, though, for what has happened there in Phoenix with the Suns. So now you have Budenholzer on the open market. You've got Mike Malone on the open market. You've got Taylor Jenkins on the open market. Of those 3, and it's just those 3 for now, which is the most appealing hire? Is it Malone that would be the most appealing hire, or is it just fit dependent?
I think it's a little fit dependent, but I will say this: Malone will they all 3 will have interest, but Malone, there's real interest, and there's a lot of buzz about him in San Antonio, which is an interesting fit, by the way, because let's remember that Budenholzer was Pop's right-hand man forever and a day, and you could absolutely bring him back. And I think Budenholzer works if you're trying to establish who you are and build a program. He could not be dropped in on veterans and make it work, but he's taken over Atlanta. He's taken over teams that have Milwaukee, where they needed somebody to come in and set an identity and hey, we're going to be this kind of team and play this style. Budenholzer has that, so we'll see. But he's taken more backlash coming out of this job from people carrying water for KD and Booker a little bit, and for the Suns, but he didn't handle that situation terribly well, and I got a feeling he's going to take a season off.
Does Booker have to go? And do they is Durant gone? Is Booker gone? Do you just tear this thing down to the studs, or because you've got no draft capital, where do you go? The Suns could be in the wilderness for a long time, depending on now the next move they make in terms of the direction of the franchise.
Don't leave yourself no outs, man. Don't put yourself in this position where they are not going to tear it down to the studs for 2 reasons. But you mentioned the key one. They don't own their own draft picks. The only reason Brooklyn made the trades this summer to get their draft picks back from Houston. And that was just so that they could be, Jody Fernandez screwed up and kept winning games by being a good coach. But you can't do it. And the other part of that is not Matt Ishbia's way. And that is what he's said repeatedly. Durant's gone. They're going to try to trade Beal. They'll probably have to attach a pick to move him, but they'll try to trade Beal this year, get some picks back, get some youth back, retool this thing around Booker. But they're not, honestly, and with all due respect to how good Devin Booker is, they're not going to be much better. They're pretty much going to be, I think, we'll see what it ultimately looks like, but I got a feeling, barring some miracle, they're going to look a lot like this next year. They're going to be a borderline play-in team.
Ugh, man. And that's tough, man, because that's a great fan base there in Phoenix.
Yeah.
And they're in for some very mediocre basketball. Not terrible, but
no.
But if what you're describing is true, they're just going to be mediocre.
And that's the worst place to get stuck on the carousel in the NBA, right? Because you don't draft high enough to get the kind of guy who breaks you out of that, but you're never quite bad enough, right? Or you're never quite bad enough, but you're never quite good enough to compete for anything, so you're just stuck.
We're going to look ahead to the NBA playoffs because we won't talk to Kurt again until next week. We'll do that coming up in a couple of moments. Don't go anywhere. Lots more Sports Wrap on this Wednesday. Continuing the conversation on the NBA, coming up in 10 minutes, some football talk, a comparison to make. Travis Hunter, Shohei Ohtani. Ohtani, transformative figure for baseball, the pitching, the hitting, playing both sides, so to speak. Travis Hunter is going to do that in the NFL. Could he be that kind of sort of transformative player? We'll talk about that coming up in a few minutes. Sam Yarnell will join the conversation at that time. But we talk with our friend Kurt Helin of Pro Basketball Talk at NBCSports.com. You mentioned Taylor. We were talking during the break real quick on Taylor Jenkins and the job market. Could he be a coach somewhere next year?
I would be almost surprised if he's not. And I told you, if it's a rebuilding team, that you were trying to build up a culture and a system. I think he was really good at that. He just kind of wore it out in Memphis.
We talked on the air and off the air a bit about Chauncey Billups and in Portland, and he winds up getting a contract extension there. How surprised were you that they opted to bring him back?
Mildly. I thought if they were really into him, they would have done it when they announced Joe Cronin's GM extension. Like, hey, we're just bringing these guys back. We're happy with them. I think what happened is the rumors were out there tying him to Phoenix in particular, but possibly other destinations as well. New Orleans will be looking for a coach pretty possibly. Well, maybe not now. That's a whole nother story.
Yeah.
But he's been linked to other places, Denver, where he played. And so I think they were kind of like, well, we're not going to do better. Like they finally looked good the second. They were basically a 500 team the second half of the season. Let's just lock him down.
Fair enough. Let's go back to the playoffs here for a second in the series that we do know about. Knicks and Pistons is very intriguing to me if we're talking about the East as well as the Pacers and the Bucks. Is it more than just the Pistons will push the Knicks? Could the Pistons win this series?
Unlikely. I think you have to learn to win a little bit in the NBA, and I trust Brunson's clutch. Cat was huge in the playoffs last year. I think he'll have a very good playoffs this year again. I expect them to just be too much. But Cade Cunningham's going to have a series. They don't really have a good guy to defend him. He likes to beat you from the mid-range. He knows how to operate those pick and rolls smoothly. And they're physical. The bad news for Knicks fans, hypothetically, out there, if there were any in this conversation, Jason, is that this is the kind of series you come out of just banged up on the other side. You're just sore and beat down. It's going to be physical and tough. And then you go into the next series against what most likely will be Boston team that looks like the best team in the East. And that's a rough go when you're a little banged up.
What did the Knicks learn about themselves with Brunson out for that extended period with the ankle injury that could help them here?
They did find some other offense at points, and OG had stepped up with some plays. I think I don't want to say it's always good to be without your star, but they are so dependent on Brunson to create offense that having a few games with some time without him and being able to keep their head above water by finding enough offense elsewhere, and their defense got a lot better. it showed them a path to at least what they can do with the bench in the postseason.
How important is an opening round series win for the Bucks when you're talking about the future of that franchise and Giannis?
Watch Giannis's body language, right? Like through this series, like how I'm not one of the big body language guys out there. This is not the Bill Simmons body language podcast, but this is one case where you really should be watching it. And a lot of teams around the league are. How frustrated does he get? And especially, they're going to at least start this series without Damian Lillard. We'll see if he rejoins them at some point. First round series can drag out for a while. But that's a tough series for them against a team that wants to get up and down. It's going to be an entertaining series. But them getting bounced in the first round, there's going to be a lot of eyes on Giannis and whether he really wants to be there long term or not.
Move out to the West here for a moment and talk to me about the Nuggets and Clippers. The Clippers have sort of become my little glam pick out here in the West with the way they've played. And when you got Kawhi going 42 and 47 minutes the last two games of the season and really showing out here over the last 20, 21 games, maybe even a little more than that. You look at the way he's played and you put that with Harden, who's obviously rejuvenated here down the stretch, what Zubats gives them in the middle. All of a sudden, the Clippers kind of look tantalizing here.
I actually picked them to win this series, and I don't do that with a ton of confidence, but enough. The bet is this. Kawhi Leonard can play 7 games, right? Like that's kind of what you're betting on. James Harden will play in 7 games and be good in 4 of them, or 5 of them maybe. But they are, look, this is again, Ty Lue has coached a very good defensive team with Zubats, who's on my all-defensive team, in the paint, owning it. And then when Kawhi is going like this, when he is the guy who can just get to his spots and he's so strong. You can't stop him from getting there. You can't stop him once he gets there. He gets buckets. James Harden still took over in overtime against the Warriors, had 12 in OT. He's capable of those stretches still where he's elite. And Norman Powell puts up buckets and other guys step up for them. That's a deep team that finds different ways to beat you, and I kind of like them against the Nuggets in a long series.
If there's anything that scares you about the Wolves when you talk about this Lakers T-Wolves matchup, what is it?
They can match up the Lakers' size. The Lakers don't have a true center, but they're just big across the board. It's 6'9" guys. Luke is 6'8", LeBron 6'9". Just across the board, they're big. Minnesota's one of the teams that can match that. Has had good playoff success. Has a center in the middle that can be a problem. Obviously, in Rudy Gobert defensively, and they have Ant, who's due to kind of step up, wants that moment. So they're physical. They're big. I think they make this a difficult series. Ultimately, I didn't pick them, and again. Luka Doncic will just be in the nightmares of Timberwolves fans.
Yeah, I tell you, Gobert. I think Gobert definitely poses some problems for them in that series as well, in terms of what he's able to do in the middle. Last thing before I let you go here, just back to my Knicks for a second. If they go out early, is Thibodeau at risk? I know you say he's a Rose guy and all that.
Yeah, that's my first reaction is always like he's a Leon Rose guy, so I don't know. But that they would do that. He's kind of the identity of that team, but he is as our friend Vlad had put it, he is a coach with a expiration
got a shelf
date.
life. Yeah.
Yeah, his style will wear teams out. And is it that where you need to change? Have you gotten to the point where maybe going and getting a Mike Malone kind of guy, fiery but in a different way, just a different voice in the locker room? Nobody's going to really come in and change anything dramatically, but do they need to hear it from somebody else?
Danny Hurley, telling you, Danny Hurley, go get Danny Hurley. He won't say no to that job. Kurt Helin, I always appreciate it. We'll talk to you next week.
Take care, buddy.
We're coming back. This Wednesday edition of the show continues. Let's move away from the basketball. I can do a football topic every day. I was sitting here yesterday thinking about so many different storylines heading into this NFL draft and the remainder of this NFL offseason. And one of them that came to my mind was the comparisons, the comps on somebody like Travis Hunter. I want to bring in our friend Sammy Arnell, who hangs out with us on the show most days. So I was thinking about this yesterday. I was watching a conversation on First Take where they were discussing the idea of Travis Hunter not getting enough love right now. He's not getting enough adulation, that he's not getting enough attention, and not enough is being made of what he's about to embark on, this NFL career, being this two-way player on both offense and defense. And first of all, I think he's been getting plenty of love. I don't think that's an issue. He just won the Heisman. But at the same time, I started to think about comparisons to other sports and if there's ever been anything like this. And the easiest one for me is what we have in baseball with Shohei Ohtani, where he's both a pitcher. Yes, he hasn't pitched in the last couple of years. He will pitch again at some point. And what he does on the offensive end of things, Sam. Can Hunter be that for the NFL? Or is the NFL just so big that he'll still sort of just blend in with other stars of the game once he gets to that level?
Well, here's the thing about this whole situation, Jason. First of all, nobody's ever going to be Shohei Ohtani. Nobody is ever going to be that good at multiple positions in any sport ever again. Again, this is classic us in 2025 not appreciating that we're witnessing greatness on the baseball diamond that is Shohei Ohtani. We're talking about more than a once in a generational player. We're talking about a once in a lifetime kind of player. And yes, there is a large difference there. You can do the math, those of you at home. Listen, Shohei Ohtani is the best hitter in Major League Baseball. And when he pitches, well, the stats speak for themselves. He's one of 5 pitchers since 2021 with 20 plus, 10 plus strikeout games, right? And all those other pitchers are full-time pitchers and they're still pitching and they just got to that threshold. Shohei Ohtani is incredibly good at what he does. That's not to say that Travis Hunter is bad, but when you look at Travis Hunter, and I think this is the key thing, what does every draft analyst say about him, right? He's not going to be he's not a top 3 wide receiver in this draft. And he's not a top 3 quarterback in this draft. But the fact of the matter is, when you have the value of getting a 2-for-1 and quite literally, again, having a, we'll call it top 5, top 10 even generously, draft pick at 2 positions in 1 pick, that is where the value comes from. So, you know, I think that we have severely downplayed the greatness of Shohei Ohtani yet again. And Travis Hunter, while he's good at football, he's not an all-time great. He's an all-time great story. He's not an all-time great player.
Wow. That take kind of surprised me when it comes to Hunter. I thought you'd be a little higher on him. And it's not to say you don't think he's talented. You think he's good. There are people talking about him at like all-time athletic levels. Now, note what I'm saying here. Athletic levels. Sure. In terms of his athleticism and what he's able to do and how that can translate to the NFL. And part of the reason I also bring this up is this whole thing about whether or not teams are going to let him play on both sides. You know, you got the Browns GM out there talking about him being, you know, a little more geared towards receiver than he is towards the defensive side of the ball, which was part of the reason I also brought this up as well. I also think it's kind of funny, your love for Ohtani. And how you love to overstate the idea that he's the best hitter in baseball when he's not. That's clearly Aaron Judge. You know, and the fact of the matter is, how many starts has can we look this up? How many starts has Shohei Ohtani actually made as a pitcher? During all this time that he's been in Major League Baseball, how many starts has he actually made in Major League Baseball? Can we find that out? Because it's probably not as many as you'd like to think it is. Like, we love to glamorize. We love to you know, create this image of him being, you know, like he pitches and he hits. Well, he's pitched a little bit because he's been mostly injured throughout his entire Major League Baseball career. How many starts has he made?
86.
In how many years?
5.
That's not a lot of starts. I mean, I'm not saying it isn't great, but it's not a lot of starts. You know what I mean? I'm just saying.
He's
And
throwing
look,
on
I agree.
average 100 innings a season when he pitches. That's pretty much the threshold.
100 innings? That's it? That's what we're holding as the threshold? Come on. I mean, look, all of that notwithstanding. I mean, look, I'll never deny Ohtani's greatness. I just sometimes think you might overstate it a little more, so I got to lurch it back the other way. I think what Hunter's about to embark on might be a little more special than you think it is. And quite honestly, I don't think we really know. I wonder in some regards if we've only scratched the surface on how great he can be at the next level. That he might actually exceed expectations in many regards as opposed to what he did at the collegiate level, playing at Colorado for a first-time head coach in Dion, playing with Shador, who, runs around and is able to extend plays with his legs, but, we're still not sure what Shador Sanders is. I get the impression that we might actually see a better Hunter at the next level. I'm just saying.
The Dion press machine strikes again. This is a team that had their most offensive success against teams like Colorado State.
It's true.
Let's not forget Hunter and Sanders' record, 13-12.
It's very true. We're coming back. Coming up in 10 minutes, some surprising names atop the home run leaderboards early on in the Major League Baseball season. Or we could just do an entire odds and ends on the fact that the Yankees have taken the first two from the Royals and Max Fried is looking like the ace they need him to be. We could do that too. We could do that, Sam Yarnell. Why not? We could just go and wax poetic about Max Fried and how Jason Dominguez is starting to rake and the Yankees have won a couple in a row. We could do that. Could do that. No? Yes? Maybe? No? It's a TV show. It works better if you talk. No? You're without words?
I don't know, man. You're the one that drives this boat.
No, yeah. That's, well, it's more like a ship without a rudder, but that's okay. So let's talk about this whole thing. And we didn't get into it on the Monday after the Masters, although Ryan Ballingy mentioned it briefly in our conversation when he and I spoke on Monday. This whole thing about the way Bryson DeChambeau and Rory McIlroy interacted or didn't interact in this case during the Masters final round where the two were paired up. And some people thought it was Bryson, throwing some cold water and some shade at Rory by saying, well, he didn't really talk to me the entire round. And then you have Bob Rotello coming out, the noted sports psychologist. I actually had somebody once hand me a Rotello book because I used to have the yips with short putts back when I used to play golf a lot. And somebody handed me a Rotello book, and they were like, you should read this. Or sometimes my temper would get the best of me on the golf course, and they'd be like, you should read a Rotello book. And they handed me a Rotello book, which I promptly handed back and said, get out of my face before I kill you. So Rotello says it was all part of the plan. It was all part of the strategy that Rory was just locked in the zone. And that's why he wasn't talking to Bryson. But Bryson clearly felt the need to mention it, which obviously means it was something that was kind of on his mind, Sam. What do you make of Rory's approach, and did it have anything to do with anything we saw on Sunday?
I thought it was classic. I guess we can now differentiate these two people of Rory. It was classic pre-Grand Slam Rory. Classic, I'm going to be a child unnecessarily for, reasons unbeknownst to anyone that don't really matter to anyone except for myself. I'll get to those in a second. And the fact that he would go and do such a thing at the most historic major, probably the most historic venue in golf. Probably, maybe St. Andrews, but probably Augusta, if we're being honest. Yeah, it was just a childish thing to do out of Rory McIlroy, but honestly, not a surprise from pre-Grand Slam Rory, right? We can remember as recently as last season, right, blowing up on hole 72 of a tournament and then spinning his wheels, leaving a golf tournament, right? This is what Rory did. This is who he was before he had won this Grand Slam, and I think that he is a very fortunate golfer that everyone is now going to forget about that, because he did a very, very good job of having a very strong PR team behind him the second he completed the Grand Slam. And he's done a very good job of being kind of this public family man, good to everybody in front of the cameras all the time ever since he put that green jacket on. But I think people are going to be very quick to forget who Rory McIlroy was shortly before he put that green jacket on. And quite frankly, that's somebody who wasn't great for the game of golf. Not only speaking about, last year what he did with the Bryson DeChambeau, or with the speeding off the tournament thing, this with the Bryson DeChambeau thing, being at the forefront of the collision between the PGA Tour and Live Golf, and kind of igniting the fire in the head-to-head rivalry between those PGA golfers and the Live golfers. You remember some of the things he said when those players left. So again, not surprising of who Rory was at the time, but it seems like maybe he changed after he played a nice round of golf that day.
I think it's a step too far to say he's not good for the game of golf, because I think overall, greatness and legendary greatness, sixth player only to complete the career Grand Slam, only the third ever to win the Grand Slam and win the Players. I think if you take it in totality, I think the good outweighs the bad. That being said, here's what I'll say about Rory. I think he's extremely robotic. I think a lot of it's contrived. And look, there have been a lot of great athletes that have been very mechanical in that way. Derek Jeter was known for saying tons without ever saying anything. There was that sort of mystique about Derek Jeter from a playing standpoint, much like Rory. But at the same time, Derek Jeter was a guy that gave you nothing, absolutely nothing, when it came to actually talking to him and nuts and bolts and talking about baseball and talking about the game and enhancing the experience for the viewer that way. Rory is a lot like that. Even Tiger throughout his entire career. Right. Only in the last several years, when he came to really appreciate what the game meant to him when it was taken from him, did Tiger start to open up. Well, you could say that too. That's fair. But there came a point where Tiger sort of opened up a little bit. A little bit. He still hasn't opened up all the way, but he's 100%. Opened up a little bit. Rory's very robotic that way, though, Sam. That's just how he is, for better or worse.
No, you're right. And again, I think that's part of why, again, before the green jacket, there was a long stretch of time, multiple years long, where, again, I'll go back to it. Rory McIlroy was bad for the game of golf because of everything he was doing like that.
Yeah, and the juxtaposition between him and DeChambeau really put it even more on display during that final round, where you have DeChambeau slapping everybody 5, man of the people, I'm the next Arnold Palmer, and Rory's just boom, laser focused. We're back with odds and ends next. Just about time to put the wraps on this baby for a Wednesday. Tomorrow on the show, hopefully David Ardsma, usually his weekly MLB spot with us. Sam will undoubtedly ask him some useless, funny question that we will make fun of Sam for. Just saying. Somewhere in that conversation, there will be some question about, tell me the first time you were depantsed in the locker room or something like that, and how funny was it? Some question like, the first time they did the 3-man lift or something like that. We'll see. We'll see what Sam has tomorrow on the show. Yeah? Something? No? Maybe? A little bit? Yeah?
All right.
Yeah. Okay. So I want to tell you folks something. We have something called the SportsWrap with Jason Page podcast. It's available on all your favorite podcasting platforms. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube Podcasts, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, Odyssey, Amazon. Anywhere you get a podcast, you can listen to this show. It's great. You can get it on the way to work. It's 45 minutes. Go and check that out anytime you have the chance to. Make sure to subscribe. It is great. We also have the Jason Page, the Sports Wrap with Jason Page YouTube channel, which is available on YouTube, of course, because that would be a YouTube channel. Go and check that out as well. Clips from the show, all sorts of goodies. Go and check that out. All right. Without any further delay, Sam Yarnell, it's time for some odds and ends. Odds and ends. Who had Tyler Soderstrom leading Major League Baseball on April 16th when it came to home runs? He hit his 8th of the year last night in an A's win on the road in Chi-Town against the White Sox. Tyler Soderstrom. Sam Yarnell, what do you have to say about Tyler Soderstrom? What can you tell me
we tried
about
to tell you before the season started that this Sacramento ballpark was going to play small, and I mean, so far it is. Everyone's seen all the trends about the over. As recently as Sunday was when I looked at it last time. I believe they were 6-2 to the over in their first 8 games at that Sacramento ballpark. The ball is just flying out of that place. Again, tried to tell you before the season started, and oh, shocker, the Prince of Picks was right yet again. Tyler Soderstrom absolutely crushing baseballs right now and doing it at that altitude with that thin air in Sacramento. I don't know, man. A's are going to be fun. I keep trying to tell people the A's are going to be a fun baseball team as long as they play at this Little League ballpark that's smaller than Yankee Stadium.
That one, the one he hit last night was in Chicago. So
both of them.
Yeah.
He had 2 last night.
He's got 6. He's got 8 on the year. By the way, who had Wilmer Flores with 6 home runs? He's also off to
leading the league in
start.
RBIs.
Yeah.
Wilmer Flores, an incredible turnaround. And again,
Journeyman. He's a journeyman.
It speaks to the prowess that Giants team has this year. I mean, the Jung-Ho Lee turnaround has been one of the, again, most underreported things in baseball, how good this kid is this year. Obviously, had his rookie season ruined by injury last year, but I don't want to give Wilmer Flores his credit away. I think that has a lot to do with Wilmer Flores' success, because when you've got to pitch around Jung-Ho Lee to get to Wilmer Flores, or pitch to Wilmer Flores to avoid getting to Jung-Ho Lee, it creates a very interesting dichotomy with pitchers and hitters when you're talking about facing the San Francisco Giants. Wilmer Flores has been a very interesting piece. He's kind of a you-go-we-go guy when you're looking at the San Francisco Giants.
By the way, Mike Trout has 6 home runs, and he's only hitting 186. He's doing the Joey Gallo right now. 186, 6 home runs, 14 RBIs in the early going for Mike Trout. The good news is he's on the field. He's actually not hurt. So that's good. Anytime we mention Mike Trout's name and we're saying he's not hurt, that's a good thing. James Wood, Sam Yarnell, laying the lumber down at PNC Park last night. What did he hit, his 5th home run?
6th. No,
6th?
He's
got 6.
He's one of.
I shorted him.
Yeah, he's one of. There's a hodgepodge of names with 6 home runs in Major League Baseball right now.
He is one of them.
I mean, again, the young Nats, they're looking good so far. James Wood just hits the ball so hard. Wherever he hits it, whether it's up, down, left, or right, the kid just puts everything he has into the baseball. And yeah, it seems like a lot of people who know more than me about everything are pretty high on James Wood. So we'll take that.
Pro Women's Softball has its commissioner, and her name is Kim Ng. The former GM for the Miami Marlins takes over that role for this league that hopes to expand and gain some traction. Will you watch professional women's softball, Sam Yarnell? This is not a trap question, by the way.
I won't. I do actually. I know someone who's playing in one of their rival leagues, the Athletes Unlimited League.
This is Athletes Unlimited. This is the one that she.
Yes. Oh, I thought this was a different league.
No, this is the league she's going to be the commissioner. I know someone who's playing in
this league.
Yep.
And listen, I think that it just with regard to the league as a whole. Before I get to my other point.
Sure.
It's really good for women's sports that they're like trying to make these professional leagues out of these sports that are typically that we watch all the time for women's college sports, but then never really think about at the professional level. I do think it's like the gateway to having a major league softball, right? Or well, there already is a National Women's Soccer League and there already is a WNBA, but Major League Softball, you're next. This speaks to the failure of the Miami Marlins, and I'll keep saying it and keep saying it. Ownership, they've just been a colossal letdown. Look at Peter Bendix or whatever his name is, the guy who's their president right now. Total meltdown, total head case. Yeah, the Marlins are in a really tough spot, and it's all because they let this woman go.
Yeah, I'm happy for her, and I'm sure this is something that she's passionate about, but at the same time, it's a loss for Major League Baseball as a whole to not have Kim Ng working for somebody in Major League Baseball. She is really good at what she does. It's going to wrap it up for us. Thank you to Kurt Helin. Thanks to you, Sam. We're back with you on Thursday for more Sports Wrap. David Ardsma then. We'll see you.